Hey everybody, how are you? It's Dr. Cruz from Healing Out Loud. So nice to be with you tonight. Okay, so I wanted to conclude the videos on communications. Actually, it's not concluding. I have one more after tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about clarification. So the previous two that I went over was general points on considering how to communicate more effectively. And I gave some pointers on that. And then the second one was on nonverbal communication. So tonight we're going to discuss clarification. Okay? So sometimes, as you know, we can communicate with people and we don't really understand exactly what they're saying. Or maybe their nonverbal communication, their facial expressions, their energy, their demeanor, their eye contact, things of that nature are not congruent with the message that they're sending. And so we become confused, or we notice that things are not kind of adding up in our head. We're hearing one thing from them, but we're sensing something totally different. So tonight we're going to talk about clarifying, right? So listen, if you're in a relationship or you work with someone, whatever we do, we communicate, like I said in previous videos, we communicate throughout the day with multiple types of people. Our spouses, our children, our employers, our friends, and we want to make sure that we're on the same page, especially in relationships. It's very, very important to make sure that we are hearing the message that they are intending to communicate to us. Sometimes they intend to communicate something to us, but it's not really what is being relayed to us. And so it's upon us to clarify, to ensure that we're hearing or we're interpreting what it is that they intend to communicate to us. Okay? All right. So clarification. It's the process of bringing vague communication, statements, and ideas into sharper focus. Sometimes we are not quite sure of what is being said, but we don't know how really to get a better understanding. So some of the ways that we can do that, we're going to talk about that tonight. Okay, how can we get better understanding? So clarification. It gives the speaker an opportunity to clear up any confusion among listeners about what's being said or what's being intended to be said. It helps the listener to get more information, and it helps both the speaker and the listener to see the other perspectives. So important, right? For us to see, or the speaker to see the other perspectives and points of view in the dialogue that we're having. Very, very important. There is a biblical principle that says, seek to understand before being understood. And if we can lead with that, then we help to resolve a lot of miscommunication, because our intention as the listener is to seek to understand instead of trying to make our point first, which so often happens in communication, right? We want to be understood. We want to be heard. We have, our emotions are boiling up and we're like, no, listen, you need to understand. And sometimes, no, they don't. We need to understand. Right? So we have to subjugate our ego so that we can get a clearer understanding. It's all about our intention. What is your intention when you're in dialogue with someone? Is it to make a point? Is it to be heard? Is it to speak your point? Or is it really to understand the speaker first? I would suggest the latter. So getting clarification. If there is confusion or a mixed message, such as someone's expression or posture being quite different from what they're saying, right? Here are some ways to get clarification. So that means they're not being congruent. If their body language is not congruent with their message, it can confuse us. Number one, state back to the other person your understanding of what is being said. For example, you might say, "You've said several things. Let me see if I got it all." So you could say, "Okay, You've said several things. Let me see if I got it all. You're talking about you're frustrated with me. You're talking about, I haven't done certain things. But you're also talking about one subject, and then you're switching to a whole nother subject. Is that your frustration bleeding over into like a whole different topic? Because, maybe we could just talk about one thing at a time. How many times has that happened to you where you're speaking with someone and so many points get brought up that you kind of get lost in the dialogue? It's like, wait a minute, we were talking about, doing household chores, and now we're talking about you don't even feel like I love you. That's two totally different things. But for the speaker, it can kind of all blend together sometimes. And we as the listener have to help the speaker sometimes because maybe they're being emotional. Maybe they really are frustrated to the max, right? Or even your employer. Maybe your employer talks about, you were late and then you didn't do this right and then you didn't do that right. And, now, you're going to get written up and you're like, okay, hold on. Can I get clarification on exactly what it is that you need from me? What am I doing that's wrong? Or maybe maybe it's not something as obvious as being late. Maybe it's just his or her expectations aren't being met, but you're not really clear on what their expectations are. So you want to make sure you help to clarify those by asking questions. And number 2 is ask questions to clarify any statements that are confusing to you. It's okay to ask questions. Don't join in on the banter. People sometimes go off and they're just ranting because they have so much built up for so long that if they begin to muddy the waters, we need to help, like I said earlier, help them clarify exactly what their points are. Because if not, you're arguing about a whole bunch of stuff and that's not effective communication at all. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. Everybody experiences it. Let me tell you, if you think you're the only one that experiences, miscommunication or arguing, or you're talking about one thing and then the next minute you're like talking about something on a completely different planet, you're not alone. It's human nature. People get wrapped up in a bunch of stuff that they haven't really talked about. And so then they're just like, blah, and they're talking about a bunch of stuff. And you're like, hold on, that's your job. Okay, hold on. Be patient. You be the bigger person, especially when you realize it's needed. Be the bigger person and just use your adult skills, your patience, your logic, your clear communication techniques, like I'm talking about, asking questions. And, help to diffuse the situation. If the discussion is getting a little heated, it behooves you to be the bigger person because maybe the other person is a little bit out of control because they're emotional, right? And it's okay. We're all emotional. But the person who's not emotional, don't become emotional just because the communicator is emotional. You maintain your peace and your calm and your demeanor and your bearing and you know what I mean? To guide the conversation. Number 3 says the 1-2 approach. And that is, number 1, share with the person what you observe and how you're perceiving and interpreting their facial expressions. That's a big one, right? For example, the person's statement and facial expression are not in sync, so they might not be congruent. 2, ask the person if your perception is accurate or if you have misinterpreted the communication. Ask them to clarify the message. For example, you could say, I'm a little bit confused here. While you're telling me that the situation will get resolved soon, I see what I would consider an expression of worry on your face. Can you help to clarify that for me? How are you feeling right now? Just tell me how you're feeling. Because sometimes the feeling, if you can help de-escalate the emotion that they're having, then they will be able to communicate more clearly. And it's always good to be the bigger person. If you see they're a little bit out of control and stuff, just say, hey, listen, why don't we pause for a minute? Because I'm getting mixed communication. I'm getting mixed signals. I'm not really quite sure what we're talking about. And you seem to be a little frustrated. Or maybe you don't even want to say that, because then that comes off as judgmental, and then you put them on the defense, and they're like, I'm not frustrated. You know what I mean? They start defending themselves. So maybe you could just say, hey, I'm getting frustrated. Why don't we just take a pause for a minute, and come back in a few minutes, and you can help clarify to me what it is exactly that you need from me. You are not telling the person that you don't believe him or her, but instead you are letting them know that you own your own confusion. And that's so very important, because a lot of the times we'll communicate and we don't intend to put the other person on defense, but we do, because we come off maybe judgmental, or we might say something that triggers them. And now we haven't de-escalated the situation at all. We've put fire or fuel onto their fire. You know what I mean? So these are the tips today for effective communication. It's so important, because we communicate all throughout the day. And if we want to have healthy relationships at home, at work, and in other places, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's up there. 85, 90% of what we do every day is communicating somehow. Even the way we drive, if we're honking our horn, we're being aggressive, we're sending an aggressive message, people get offended. And then they, they want to retaliate. They honk back or flick you off or whatever. You know what I mean? So it behooves us to learn how to stay calm, stay in control, be logical, and guide the conversation. Don't be reactive. There's two ways to respond primarily, and that's to be reactive or to respond. And there's a big difference between the two. So when you're reactive, you are not thinking. You're kind of flying off the handle based on emotion, right? You're being reactive. Someone has triggered you emotionally, and you're not thinking. You're just responding without thinking. But responding, now, that's the grown-up way to communicate. You pause. You wait. You think. You ponder. You analyze. You compare and contrast. You assess. You assess the communicator. You assess the situation. You assess your own temperament and your own emotional state. And then you come up with a well thought out response. Not something that you're flying off the handle. And also, when you respond, think about what the end result is that you want. Do you want to fight with this person? Or do you want to come up with a win-win end result for whatever the situation is that you're talking about, right? You want to feel heard and respected, and you want them to feel heard and respected, and they want to obviously be heard and respected. So stay in control, okay? That's the key. You gotta stay in control. And worst case scenario, pause, go pray. Go pray. I'm telling you, go read a Bible verse or something. Go put on some music, dance a little bit, interrupt the pattern of frustration or negativity or accusations or name calling or judgments, whatever the negativity is. Interrupt that pattern and introduce something positive in the moment. Maybe you can't pray with them together in that moment, but sometimes you can. You could say, babe, listen, this is getting out of control, baby. Let's pray. Let's just pause. Let's just pause and let's pray for a minute. Okay? And if you have that relationship with them, they'll be open to that because they're accustomed to you all praying together. And as we know, if it's a personal relationship, those that pray together have a better chance of staying together. Right? And our children, we must pray with our children. Okay? If not, we're like animals, not using our higher functioning faculties. We're humans. We're higher thinking humans for a reason. So use the tools that God gave you. Okay? Develop your mindset. If you don't know how to communicate well, Google tips on communicating. You can read books on communicating. And if you're in a relationship, I really encourage you to read books about relationships. There's a really great book that I love as a therapist. I use it as a tool with couples therapy, and it's called His Needs, Her Needs. And I can't recall, let me see if, no, I don't have it here with me. But I can't recall who the author is, but it's called His Needs, Her Needs. And it talks about like the top 10 needs for him and the top 10 needs for her. And it shows you how usually his top 3 or 5 are her last 3 or 5, right? So if he's seeking, acknowledgement or sex or validation or something like that, if those are his primary needs, her primary needs might be physical affection, emotional support, and respect, and I don't know that those are the different needs, but for example, she's seeking one thing and he's seeking something totally different. And if you're in a relationship and you want to communicate effectively, you really need to know, what is it that my significant other really needs at this moment? And be intentional. Oh, my Lord. Hold on. I got to pause because this is a good one. Be intentional. This is so important, and a lot of people miss it. It just, they don't even get it. They have never heard about it. And the ego wants to resist this suggestion. And I suggest that you don't let your ego resist this. Be intentional. If you're in a relationship with somebody, I'll say I. When I'm in a relationship with somebody, my intention, now that I'm a clear-minded, focused adult, goal-setting adult, I don't just do things haphazardly. I do everything with an end in mind, right? So I'm not frivolously here dating somebody, right? I have goals and expectations for our relationship. And so the expectations are for my significant other and for me. So my intention when I'm in a relationship is to love and to hear the other person, to not argue with the other person, to come up with a win-win situation for each other. My intention is to be what my significant other needs. And as long as I'm secure in myself and I'm whole and healed, most of the time I can bow out gracefully. I don't need to make my point. I don't need to be right. There are many people that feel that they need to be right and that they need to be heard instead of being the peacekeeper or being the solution provider. I want to be a solution provider. And as long as, it's a give and take in the relationship overall, I don't want to continuously be the one resolving the situation and then I'm emotionally unfulfilled. But if we can both be in a relationship where we both intend to be what the other needs, then we are compromising. We're not sacrificing ourselves to death. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So have the intention to want to have an excellent relationship, to want to be an excellent communicator, to not be the kind of person that leads with their ego, but leads with their heart. I love this little thing. I put in my other video earlier. I got it from church yesterday. It's so cute, right? My little heart. You see my little heart? Isn't it pretty? They gave me 2 of them. So be the person in your relationship who's leading with their heart. And encourage your significant other to lead with their heart. If you're friends, if you have the foundation of friendship and if you have the foundation of God, if that's your thing, it's not everybody's thing, but I'm not getting in a relationship without God in it. You know what I mean? Because I used to live based on my understanding of things and my decisions and my choices alone. And I didn't make very good ones. But when I incorporated God in my life, honey, everything changed. The quality of people that I surround myself with changed. The quality of people that I date changed. Hold on, my computer just went out on me and I can't see. Okay. So, you know what I mean? God, the Bible, if that's your thing, it provides a great foundation. And if both of you are Christians or whatever your spirituality is, as long as you're on the same page, then it shouldn't be that big of a shock to say, babe, hold on. We need to pause and we need to either pray or we need to take a break and then maybe we'll pray later, you know, because this is getting out of control and we're about to start fighting and I'm not feeling loved. I'm not feeling heard and I'm about to, you know, go off. And that's not what I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? And you can respect each other when you're being honest like that, you know, because we're human. And what makes us better humans is when we can sense that we're getting emotionally out of control before it actually happens. That means we're using our higher functions, right? All right, so this is effective communication, clarification. Merry Christmas, you guys. I love you. Y'all know that. Okay, talk with you later. Bye-bye.